Hi, I'm Myles Gilsenan, Vice President of Data and AI at Apps Associates. Welcome to the sixth video in our series about Apps Associates' 6 pillars of sustainable AI success. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me our CEO, Adrian King, along with our CFO, Jane Quintiliani. Welcome and thank you for joining.
Thanks, Myles. It's a pleasure to join you. Looking forward to today's interaction.
Excellent, great. Excellent. We'll get right into it. So from your seats as CEO and CFO respectively, when you hear the word AI governance, what comes to mind and why should it matter to a business leader, not just the IT team?
When I hear the term AI governance, I think about putting the right guardrails around a technology that's moving incredibly fast. We've already witnessed the incredible evolution of AI just in the past year. What was first a very smart chatbot now has the ability to execute tasks just as any other employee would. So for me, AI governance is about making sure that we can innovate without creating unnecessary risk. It's about knowing where AI is being used, what data it's accessing, how that data is being shared, who's accountable for the outcomes, and ultimately how we're protecting our customers, employees, and our business.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joel. For me, it's just an extension of the workforce or an extension of the organization. And in the same way that we put guardrails or controls around the organization and our workforce or other solutions we put in place, we should do the same with AI, whether that be physical controls, logic, permissioning, or general oversight. It can be incredibly powerful for us, but just because of the rate that it is evolving and moving doesn't exclude it from similar type setups that we would expect with other contributors to an organization.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the core ideas in our 6 pillars framework is that trust is a structural requirement for scaling AI. It's not a soft concept. I wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so just to lead off of what Adrian said, the controls that you put in place in the finance organization for those employees that, touch cash, you run a background check on them, you make sure that there's dual approvals on transactions. AI has got to be the same way. You can't run a background check on an AI tool, but, should they even have access to those types of things?
Yeah, absolutely. It can't be unfettered access. It needs to be structured. It needs to have the guardrails in the same way, we as employees of a company have read-only access to certain elements, or we don't have access to the full HR folders. The similar sort of setup needs to happen with AI and the tools that they utilize. Just good business practice.
Yeah, and continuing on that theme, AI presents a whole new world of risk and different kinds of risk. There's hallucinations, which we all know about, some interesting stories about that. There's data leakage. There's this new term called shadow AI, people doing things with AI that maybe they shouldn't be doing, maybe even creating a whole application or a mini little website these days that can do that with code generation tools. So there's a tremendous amount of things they can do, and it may not be isolated. It might even cascade across all your interconnected systems. So there's a lot out there to be worried about. And from your vantage points as chief executives in our company, which of those concerns you the most and why?
I think all of those deserve attention, but the one that concerns me the most is the combination of data leakage and shadow AI. Every organization has employees looking for ways to be more productive, and AI tools make that incredibly easy. The challenge is that people can unintentionally expose sensitive company information by using tools that haven't been properly vetted or governed.
Of all of those, data leakage comes to the forefront, and the various variations of that, straight out loss of confidential data, but all the way through to exposure of proprietary IP into a public LLM, all the loss of data through corruption or deletion by an AI agent that we did not want. But from an organization perspective, I think all of those points that you put out need to be prioritized, as you would with any other employee or any other tool set you deploy. You can't just focus in on a single risk. You've got to look at the broader case and make sure we cover off on all of those.
I would say hallucinations are maybe a lesser tier problem. If you're thinking of AI as just an extension of your workforce, humans make mistakes too. So, check the work of your AI tool. And then a lot of times you can identify if it is making mistakes through review processes and human oversight.
And a lot of business leaders think of governance as something that you put on at the end. Maybe it's the excitement of new use cases, or it's just the difficulty, the vagueness potentially of getting governance in place. But what would you say to a peer who's operating that way?
I'm going to jump in there, and it's AI is moving at a tremendous rate, and we're seeing folks adopt it without forethought and planning. And if we think about any other tool set in the organization, whether it's bringing on new software, new technology, new employees, there's a process we go through. There's ensuring we have the right security, the right setup, the right permissioning, active directories in place, single sign-ons. We're seeing organizations out there skip this because it's AI and we've got to get on board. I think that's a fatal flaw in it. We do need to adopt it quickly, and we do need to stay abreast of the changes and the technology that's available to us. But that's not without regard to the controls that are needed to ensure the proprietary data that we have internally and the controls that we'd see around human use or other tools aren't discarded.
Yeah, and companies do want to jump on this AI train really quickly, and I challenge the idea that governance is going to slow innovation. I think it's actually what enables innovation at scale. Organizations that are going to move faster because they have the confidence in how AI is being used and managed if they set the guardrails upright in the front.
When people talk about AI, explainability comes up a lot. The idea that the AI outputs need to be understandable in business terms, not just technical ones. And as executives, why do you think that matters so much at the executive level?
As executives, we're accountable for the outcomes. If AI is influencing decisions, we need to understand enough about how it arrived at the recommendation to evaluate the risk and make an informed judgment, just as you would any other employee. It's not about necessarily understanding the algorithm, but the business rationale well enough to trust what the proposed solution is from the AI.
Yeah, when we look back on history and we want to understand why that decision was made and what the rationale was, we need the full history of it. We can't just say, there was a correlation between the data. There's got to be some business rationale for getting to the end conclusion and understanding what those were. As with any decision, whether it's made by a person or a computer, it's subject to errors or subject to incorrect inputs or incomplete inputs, and understanding what those are when we do that post-mortem or that analysis after the event is going to be critical in ensuring we're able to get better and able to enhance on our decision-making processes and get better outcomes in the future. So that I think the rationale to making a decision is a key component to enhancing the future outputs from these systems.
And when you think about the balance between the financial risk of getting governance wrong versus the cost of building it right, what is your thought process? What's your decision criteria? How do you make that decision?
If it's one thing CFOs don't like, it's financial surprises. So the cost of governance is typically known and manageable. The cost of getting governance wrong can be substantial and unpredictable. The CFO, I'd rather make the deliberate investment in the right guardrails up front than deal with financial, operational, and reputational consequences later on. In many ways, governance isn't just a cost, it's an investment that enables us to scale with AI.
Do you feel like, maybe from your own personal experience, is there a period of time where we go through where AI is really not a net efficiency gain because we spend so much time figuring out what AI did and maybe even redoing it and then you eventually get to the point of the efficiency gains? Is there a period like that?
Yeah. So absolutely. I think it's two parts to it. First and foremost, AI has the ability to analyze large volumes of data and produce copious amounts of reports. It's very easy to drop 200 pages of additional reports onto an individual's desk each week and bury them under those without them being able to get their day-to-day job done and even be able to get through that large volume of analysis. I think we've got to be very cautious of that and the value it brings relative to what the organization is doing today. I think, the second part of that is around, the excitement. And, what we'll see happen is, folks will try and do something with AI and, 2-3 days later, they'll reflect on it and realize that if they'd just done it manually themselves, they could have knocked that out in a couple of hours. But they've gone at it for an extended period of time because it's a fun tool to work with, the interactions, but not always is it the right tool for the job at hand. And I think that's where we're starting to see these inefficiencies creep in. It's almost like a distraction. You think about social media for many folks and the ability just to swipe through things endlessly and aimlessly. AI can be that form of interaction and distraction. We spend hours on it, but we don't get to an outcome or a decision or a definitive point of view. That is what we're really driving towards, and we would otherwise get to as a set of employees.
Do you have any advice for companies about striking the balance between having your key leaders outsourcing their critical thinking or relying on AI too much? Maybe your critical leaders, maybe middle management, relying on AI too much and maybe not bringing their own critical thinking skills to bear. And maybe over time that balance shifts a little bit too much. How do you make sure that you're still getting not just human oversight, but the critical thinking that a human brings to the process, which sometimes is a bit more nuanced, we're finding, than the vast quantities that AI can generate?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance that each individual has to figure out. Each role, each opportunity is going to have that balance tip one way or another. And I think that's where, at the end of the day, a lot of businesses are still employee dependent, and a lot of the value is driven by the employees. And we've got to continue to believe in that and drive that. So our view is that our employees are going to become enriched through using AI, and they've got to make informed decisions at when to use it, where to use it, and how to incorporate it into their daily lives. Yeah, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to overinvest into certain areas, or we're not going to use it where we should. I think that's where peers become beneficial. Where talking to you, I might hear like, what, I tried that and I really found it didn't get to the end conclusion, but I approached it this way and this was incredibly helpful. And like many new tools and many new services that come about, there is a learning process, and how we can shorten that and flatten out the curve to the benefits that we're looking for. That is going to be how organizations release value from AI.
All right, well, great dialogue today. Last question. Okay, so if you were speaking to a CEO or a CFO and they're just beginning their AI journey, what's the one thing you would want them to take away from this conversation?
Governance is not about slowing innovation. It's about enabling it. If you set the guardrails up correctly from the beginning, your teams can innovate faster. You're going to have greater confidence in the tools, and you will be better positioned to scale AI responsibly and successfully.
Yeah, I agree with Joel. AI is not something to be fearful of. You have to embrace it. It's here for organizations from this point forward. How you embrace that responsibly is going to be key, and there's a lot of value to be untapped. And I think it's important that organizations get going on it. Don't let barriers get in front of you. Put it in place the folks that can help you navigate it responsibly, and then figure out how it's going to add value to your organization in the short and long term.
Well, great. Well, excellent insights today. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Jill. We've appreciated your input, and App Associates appreciates your leadership in the AI front. I can say you walk the talk. Everything you're talking about here, you've been doing at Apps Associates, so that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Myles.
Thank you, Myles.
Thanks, Jill.